Hello, welcome back to Bound and Unraveled. My name is Christina, and for this week's video, we're going to do a Dickensian couple of weeks in London. The inspiration for this is that in high school, I came across A Tale of Two Cities, and I just started reading it thinking I wouldn't like it, but just like out of curiosity, and I couldn't put it down. And that was my first introduction to something that we would consider like a classic that I actually just found incredibly engaging and made me appreciate language in just this totally different way. The way that he manages to convey imagery, political critique, and character observations, and also be really funny and sharp. I think that experience also made me much less intimidated by lots of like classic literature. I haven't read that much of his work. There's still definitely a few that I would really like to get to. And one of those is the Pickwick Papers. I picked up this copy at a secondhand like outdoor market in New York many years ago. And I just want to like paint a picture for you because I can't convey this through the screen. This book is one of those just treasures that, yeah, it smells so good. It has that really classic like secondhand or old book smell. And then we're gonna read a more modern book, The Fingersmith by Sarah Waters. And the reason is that on Goodreads was described as a Dickensian novel. So I thought it would be really fun to read first like an original, and then to read something that's clearly very inspired and that has references to Dickens, and experience the two together and then see how we feel. For a little blurb, according to Goodreads, it's described as a comic masterpiece that catapulted its 24-year-old author to immediate fame. Readers were captivated by the adventures of the poet Snodgrass, the lover Tupman, the sportsman Winkle, and, above all, by that quintessentially English Quixote, Mr. Pickwick, and his Cockney Sancho Panza, Sam Weller. And I'll bring you obviously around London with me, and we'll go to the Dickens Museum at some point. So anyway, thank you for being here, and I hope you enjoy this Dickensian view of London.
We missed the final call. The writing's on the wall. We fell and now we walk in the ruins of our love. Days gone fading, hearts still aching. I can't control it, I can't control it. I know, keep pretending that we could never make it. I know you know it, I know you know it, I know. In the late night, when the lights out, can't escape now. We lost. Gets me every time in the moonlight, and I can't get out. Baby, I know, I can't let go, I can't let go. The nights are cold and the sun won't show. I can't let go, can't let you go. Meet me on the other side, on the edge of the night. We'll say we'll cease fire and put our weapons down.
Hello again. I am checking in with you about a week later. I have read the first 30 chapters of about 57, I think, if I'm correct with my Roman numerals. So about halfway through. And I have decided to do the thing that I always recommend, tell myself I should do, and then find difficult to actually execute on. And that's just stop reading this book and put it back on the shelf. It's verbose but to a level that's unnecessary and has very little coherent plot. It's a lot more like vignette style, so it kind of reminds me of Friends in that at the beginning of each chapter there's a little header that says like the one in which, so for example chapter 24 says, chapter 24, wherein Mr. Peter Magnus grows jealous and the middle-aged lady apprehensive, which brings the Pickwickians within the grasp of the law. And then chapter 16 just says, too full of adventure to be briefly described. So I like that. That's very cute. But What happens as a result of kind of like the vignette style, which I think makes sense if he was publishing these in like weekly newspapers or whatever to keep the audience strung along, is that it feels like there's very little of a through line that keeps the momentum going. And we're just following this kind of handful of men who are part of this very eccentric club, and their adventures and misadventures, mostly going through the countryside, not really in London. It's like their struggles in love, miscommunications with people that they bump into along the way, a little villain, wandering villain that they are trying to unmask. Yeah, I just am finding it really difficult to stay engaged and to actually want to keep reading. It feels like there's something about the momentum or cadence of it all which just doesn't resonate with me based on what I've read, the 300 plus pages of this book, and also the other Dickens I've read. I think we can still make some general observations about Dickensian novels. So I think the first one is obviously wordiness, and I think Dickens is kind of famous / infamous for this. He never uses 3 words when he could use 6. I think that was to an extreme in Pickwick Papers, but it also is very closely tied to one of, in my views, his strengths, which is the imagery, because he's conveying things so much more descriptively and creatively. He finds really interesting allegories or metaphors. I feel like his writing is very visual, at least for me. That kind of goes along with another aspect, which I think is making fun of characters in an underhanded way, often by really getting into the nitty-gritty of like how they dress, how they laugh, the style of their voice. And it's often by poking fun at how seriously also they might take something that is a bit absurd. A lot of like just laughing at the absurd, whether it's a social phenomenon or a political situation, like the opening to Tale of Two Cities. And it's just kind of this way of making observations about like class structures, rural-urban divides, any kind of social fissure in society, the way that people feel about their honor and their pride, and the very silly situations that they put themselves in as a result. His writing style is very wordy, very image-filled. It's very grounded in historical context and in politics and, like I said, social fissures and dynamics. He's very observant of those, all while kind of poking fun at them. And I think that his commentary style is very appealing to me, at least, because he gets at some really serious issues, but in a way that can bring a little smile to your face as well. So that's my current hypothesis, and we're gonna see how that holds up as we go on to our next book, Fingersmith by Sarah Waters, which is a contemporary novel published in 2002. It's based in London, which I think most of Dickens's work is. And I just opened it last night, and I noticed that on page 1, there's already a reference to Dickens, where the main character goes to a play, and the play is Oliver Twist. So thanks for being long. I hope it's not too disappointing with Pickwick Papers. If you're interested, check out A Tale of Two Cities. In my opinion, that one's kind of hard to beat. And I will check in with you later.
Clean out the ways.
Hello! I am really excited to check in with you about Fingersmith. I just finished part 1 last night, and I feel like the back of this book doesn't say much, but I'm going to try to give you a little bit more context without spoilers. As the book starts, we're following Sue, who's this orphan, right? And she's been raised by this group of thieves, like petty thieves. Basically, another thief of their acquaintance, but not from their direct network, comes to them and says, I have a proposal for you. He's working at this house in the countryside that is just inhabited by this old man and his niece. And the old man is like off in his own world, just cares about his books, and is letting his house completely fall apart. And his niece will come into a certain amount of money if she marries. And so this guy, who is nicknamed Gentleman, and is like another criminal, comes to Sue and her network of thieves and says, I have a proposal. I'm going to try and get this young girl / young woman to fall in love with me and marry me. And if she does, then I will have basically gotten access to her money and then get her put away into a madhouse and keep the money for ourselves. And I will give you a split of the proceedings if Sue comes with me to be the young woman's lady's maid to help like push her towards marriage and then to help get her certified as insane. And so that's how the story starts. So Sue leaves London, which is where she's grown up, and she goes out to the countryside for like the first time and is at this really gloomy, it feels very gothic house where it's all just really gray and damp, and there's mold everywhere, and this library that's just full of books and like mist coming in and out. Like it has all of that atmosphere that I enjoyed about reading like Jane Eyre. It's written in a very contemporary style and it's very easy to read, and I'm really enjoying that. This book is known from the cover as having lots of twists and turns, which I really like. It's one of those books where you get to the twist and then I think you get to actually see the movie playback go backwards so that you can see how it all came together, which I quite enjoy. I am gonna have lunch and then we're gonna go to the Dickens Museum and try and find a nice place also to read part 2. And before I leave you, I will say, for whether or not this is a Dickens novel so far, I feel like it's a bit of a stretch. I understand that the premise is similar, like 19th century, orphan, thieves. Definitely feels like we're seeing the whole themes of like different social classes and the rural-urban divide. But the writing doesn't really feel very Dickensian to me in its style. It doesn't really have that like humor, really. The way that the young woman has been described does kind of, the young woman who they're conning, does kind of fit into that Dickensian style, which unfortunately I do think is a hallmark of his writing, of describing young women in particular as just kind of one-dimensional, pure, innocent creatures. So kind of 50-50 so far in my opinion on the Dickens bit. Atmosphere, yes. Thematically, quite similar, but the writing styles, in my opinion, very different. I will see you at the Dickens Museum and then check in with you probably increasingly vaguely as we continue. Thanks for coming along.
Now come around, come on naked. Too much skin is how we get in. Get me high, love me dry. Medicate a new waterway. Now close your eyes, and I promise to kiss the night. Well, stand by me. I like the sound of a wave. Watch me as I dance. Have you known romance before?
Hello again. It has been a few days and I finished Fingersmith. I listened to the audiobook performed and narrated by Juanita McMahon to finish it, and I loved the audiobook version of it, especially for the last third. I felt like it dragged on a little bit, and having Juanita McMahon's performance of the different voices and of the ambiance really helped to keep me going. So I would really recommend that if you might enjoy an audio format. I overall would highly recommend this book. I think it lives up to the hype. To kind of close out this video, some final thoughts on what might make this book be considered Dickensian, kind of in the common canon. I think it has to do with the themes and the setting. It's really interesting how this book explores ideas about gender, class, geographical divide, and also crime and guilt and the possibilities for penance and reconciliation. Again, without getting into too much detail, I do think that what you do with the circumstances that you have and how you might do things that hurt other people as a way of trying to just get on and survive in your own life, but then how you might be given the chance to try and atone. I think atonement is a really big thing. in this book, and that reminds me a lot of, for example, in A Tale of Two Cities, Sydney Carden. And then finally, I wanted to show you really quickly, I'm a sucker for postcards, and I got this lovely one of London, which I just think is spectacular. And then I thought this one was great. I'm definitely considering doing a reread of A Christmas Carol this season, and this is one version that has a Japanese frog character. So I would also really recommend the Dickens Museum. It was really lovely, a little bit bigger than I expected. It's at the house where I think he wrote Oliver Twist, and it's a 4 or 5 floor home, and they have it set up the way that, you know, he would have had, but also a few exhibitions about kind of the legacy of Dickens. The staff were all incredibly lovely and friendly and very welcoming, and there was a little cafe that I sat out in the back with the water trickling, and you can have like a little cream tea. So definitely a great place to go, and they have a student discount, so I paid about £10 for visiting. The only thing I'll say is that they have an audio tour included with your ticket, and it's on this website, and like I was just unable to access it because it kept getting stuck. And one of the people who was working there was really kind and tried to help me. She told me that that's quite a common experience and to just reload it, but it got stuck again. It would have been great to be able to actually listen to it as I was going through. That's the only thing, is I wish that they had non-phone version that you could just listen to on a headset. But apart from that, great. And there are still lots of things to read and to observe even without the audio tour. We'll close out this video here. Sorry for the ramble. But thank you so much for coming along. I hope that you enjoyed this time looking at London through a bit of a literary Dickensian lens. And I will catch you very soon in the next video.